Hi, and welcome to the VieSID Press-release. In this video, we report on articles selected from the dental literature published in March 2023 that we hope might be of interest to the VieSID community. So let's begin. In the AJODO, we found a paper by Chen et al. Evaluating central incisor root resorption and labial and palatal maxillary bone thickness in Class 2 Division 2 subjects who underwent orthodontic treatments using different techniques, namely conventional brackets, self-ligating brackets, and clear aligners. The authors considered about 20 patients per group with similar degrees of malocclusion and collecting variables from CBCT data. The volume of the roots was acquired through segmentation of the 3D volume images, while tooth displacement and the thickness of the maxillary bone were measured via linear distances. The authors found that the three orthodontic approaches managed to reach a comparable degree of anterior incisors displacement, but found a lower degree of root resorption in the patients treated with aligners. It is unclear as to why this should be the case and what could be the biomechanical cause for this reduced root resorption. One is to question whether the mechanical settings of the brackets played a role. Thus, it should probably be considered how the brackets were set rather than which kind of orthodontic appliances were used. In any case, I fully agree with the authors that this topic would require further investigation using, first of all, a larger sample. Most of all, I think that data collection from CBCT might be subjected to a high degree of bias, and thus intra and inter-observer measurement errors should be evaluated for these variables to prove the repeatability and reliability of the outcomes. In the Archives of Oral Biology, a paper by Cho et al. Demonstrated the role of receptor interacting protein 1 RIP1 in condylar chondrogenic changes caused by mechanical load. Abnormal mechanical stress distribution is known to be a trigger for osteoarthritis. It is also known that compressive stress causes the expression of RIP1, which is a crucial regulator of cell life and death. However, it is not known whether RIP1 plays a role in TMJ osteoarthritis development. Thus, Cho and colleagues designed a study to test whether inhibition of RIP1 can block necroptosis, apoptosis, and inflammation, thereby protecting TMJ from compressive mechanical stress stimulation. Thus, they considered 72 7-week-old male rats and used elastics to induce 60 grams of compressive mechanical stress on the TMJ, as in this illustration. They also used the lentivirus to knock down the transcription of RIP1, which was inoculated in the lower compartment of the TMJ, while negative lentivirus were inoculated in the right joint as control. The experiment consisted of two parts. Part 1 was performed on 24 rats to test whether the lentivirus injection in vivo could effectively knock down the expression of RIP1. If so, they could proceed with Part 2, which was performed on 48 rats to explore the protective effects of inhibiting RIP1 on the TMJ cartilage. Here are the results of the study. The positive lentivirus successfully inhibited compressive mechanical force-induced RIP1 expression in vivo. Thus, they demonstrated that their experimental design was successful and could be employed to explore the role of RIP1 in cartilage degradation under compressive forces. In fact, they showed that RIP1 inhibition protected mandibular cartilage thinning under compressive mechanical force stimulation and decreased the mortality of the chondrocytes. It reduced the inflammatory factors in the cartilage induced by mechanical stress and reduced the apoptosis of chondrocytes and also necroptosis, which has a later onset. However, RIP1 inhibition in the mandibular cartilage could not protect subchondral bone under compressive mechanical force, thereby showing that TMJ cartilage and bone are subjected to different signaling pathways. To conclude, RIP1 is essential for cell survival. In fact, a congenital absence of RIP1 is incompatible with life. RIP1 function is complex. It might suppress apoptosis and necroptosis through certain pathways, but its level increases during chondrocyte death under compressive mechanical force, thereby inducing apoptosis and necroptosis. The studies such as this, elucidating the pathways of RIP1, contributed fundamental knowledge about the pathophysiology of TMJ. Hu and Lee published in the Journal of Oral Rehabilitation a work testing the effects of the drug deferoxamine mesylate, or DFM, on condylar osteogenesis. The authors noted that mandibular deficiencies, such as in the case of skeletal class 2, can be corrected by condylar remodeling induced by mandibular advancement. However, condylar osteogenesis in response to mandibular advancement varies between individuals and might be reduced in non-growing subjects. DFM is an FDA-approved drug for the treatment of iron overloaded related disorders. DFM enhances the stability of hypoxia-inducible factor, or HIF1 alpha, which in turn promotes the formation of type H vessels. This type of vessels play an important role in bone osteogenesis. It is shown that through this pathway, DFM can reduce condylar osteoporosis. Thus, the authors wanted to test whether DFM could also enhance condylar osteogenesis induced by mandibular advancement. They considered 40 30-week-old mice and divided them into 4 groups: a control group, a DFM group, a mandibular advancement group, and a DFM plus mandibular advancement group. DFM was administered systemically by intraperitoneal injection. Mandibular advancement was obtained by trimming the lower incisor so that the mice had to bring the mandible forward to be able to feed. As the feeding pattern was altered in the mandibular advancement group, the mice lost some body weight, but were still considered healthy and viable for the analysis. After 4 weeks, the mice were euthanized and the tibias, femurs, and mandibular condyles were studied through the morphological and histological evaluation. In the DFM groups, the long bones showed increased trabecular density and bone thickness and mass. The study groups also showed an increase in H-type vessels and Osterix plus osteoprogenitors, which are transcription factors for the osteoblast differentiation and bone mineralization. New bone formation of the condylar head was detected in both mandibular advancement and mandibular advancement plus DFM groups. Morphologically, the condylar heads were similar, but the mandibular advancement with DFM condyles showed higher bone volumes. In this group, the condylar head was also denser, especially in its posterior part. The study groups showed also an increase in H-type vessels and Osterix plus osteoprogenitors, also in the condyles. Collectively, the results suggested that DFM injection combined with mandibular advancement promoted H-type angiogenesis by upregulating the HIF1 alpha signaling pathway, increasing Osterix plus osteoprogenitors, and thereby enhancing new bone formation in middle-aged mice. In the Journal of Oral Rehabilitation, an article by Hu et al. Tested effects of occlusal disharmony on a rat model. 24 rats aged 4 weeks were used. They were divided into 4 groups. One group was subjected to unpredictable stress events daily for 4 weeks. One group was subjected to occlusal disharmony. The occlusal disharmony consisted of completely abraded maxillary molars, molar cusps without reaching the dental pulp. One group was subjected to both stress and occlusal disharmony, and the last group was the control group. The rats were tested in various ways. Their behavior in a maze with 4 arms was observed. Of these arms, 2 were open and 2 closed. Reduction of time in open arms of the maze was considered as the expression of anxiety-related behavior. Corticosterone levels were sampled, and microbial communities were analyzed through RNA expression. Colon histology was performed to observe possible intestinal mucosal damage. All study groups showed an increased level of anxiety, represented by decreased time in open space. Also, their cortisol level was elevated, especially in the stress group with occlusal disharmony. The gut microbiota revealed significant changes in the predominant phyla, like actinobacteria, Bacteroidetes, Firmicutes, and Saccharobacteria. But the mucosas of the colon didn't show any alteration. I think these results are extremely interesting because they provide evidence of the important role of occlusion in stress management and consequently also in general health. In the Journal of Sleep Research, de Abreu et al. Tested effects of occlusal interferences on sleep quality in patients with sleep bruxism. The authors included female subjects between the age of 18 and 40 after a careful selection process considering as exclusion criteria the most common risk factors for sleep bruxism, including smoking or alcohol abuse or a history of recent trauma. Volunteers were included only if it was considered possible to reach occlusal stability by occlusal equilibration. The subjects were preliminarily screened for symptoms possibly associated with sleep bruxism before being subjected to polysomnography. Eventually, a total of 17 patients were included. These were divided into a test group and a control group. The test group received the elimination of occlusal interferences, plus the addition of composite for anterior guidance. In the control group, sharp margins were eliminated and an anterior palatal composite was added without changing occlusal contacts. The authors analyzed several parameters indicating masseter and temporal sleep activity and quality of sleep. Some of the parameters for temporal muscle activity decreased, while total sleep duration increased in the test group. The duration of masseter activity was significantly lower in the test group, but other parameters didn't show significant changes. This research showed some interesting insights about the influence of occlusal interferences on sleep disorders. Hopefully, future studies will resolve the limitation of this work by increasing the sample size, by quantifying the occlusal contacts and interferences through the use of occlusogram, for example, and by disentangling the effect of occlusal equilibration from that of correcting anterior guidance. Also, a quantification about the intervention applied should be reported. We have come to the end of this presentation. I invite you to contact us in case you want to know more about our activities. Otherwise, be ready for next press release. Best wishes to all.